Well, hello everybody, and welcome. We are here for race 3 of season 2, 21-22 ZRL. I'm Kate Bates, joined by the one and only Dave Towle. Dave, we're in New York City this week. Another sprinters course.
Yeah, take a bite of the Big Apple. This is an awesome course. Again, last 3 weeks, Kate, were right up your alley. Points racing, tactics, all the things that we love come into play. It's been a phenomenal day of racing. You guys kicked things off. I'll have to ask how things went in APAC. We have seen just about every possible combination and variation of racing tactics used out here. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super excited.
Yeah, now we're looking at about 50 minutes of racing, Dave, and we did kick off with APAC. It was pretty exciting, but actually a bit different to what we expected. We thought it may be a bit more for the pure sprinters like London, but actually the lumps and bumps around the park,
Yeah.
around Central Park in New York, actually make it a little bit trickier. The other thing that we know, Dave, is there's supposed to be an anvil this week in terms of power-ups, but in fact the Ghost is back for another week. We love the Ghost. And I think that in APAC, until they were actually out there, they didn't realise the Ghost would be there. So that was a bit of fun. I felt like everyone had their tactics ready, only to be thrown out the window to try again. So let's take a look at the
Just like
course.
just like in real bike racing. Isn't it
Exactly.
funny? I mean,
Exactly.
things happen. You have to adjust on the fly. But as you said, sorry to jump on you, Kate, but I thought it was very ghost-like that the ghost showed up a second sneaky time. So you're right, though. Let's take a look at this course. We're going to take a look at some
Well,
images here. It was an incredible Central Park. So I have some interesting history to share with you. I'm going to ask you a couple trivia questions during the race because I know you've been busy during the day. But first off, this is a man-made park. It's absolutely incredible how much variation in the terrain there is. We're going to be racing for 39K. It's 4 laps out here. Dutch Diesel already all over the front here, as is ATP and Cadence. There's a point sprint 4 times. That sprint scores 10 deep with 10 points for the first rider over the line, down to 1 point for the 10th. There's also fastest through segment. That really comes into play out here today. And then we've seen how important the points at the finish line are, where there's 50 points for the winner, 40 for second, 35 for third, on down through the top 30. The teams have been aggressive out here, Kate, and it looks like we're seeing the same thing. First sprint comes up at about 7.5K. We're already seeing a split, Kate Bates.
this is a pretty tough start to the race, isn't it? The bunch is already fairly reduced. We do know that DDC are going to be the really hard ones out there to beat, just based on the performances over the last couple of weeks. But Dave, tell us, what did you see in America East and in some of the other time zones? Because I'm interested in how that might compare to what happened in APAC.
Well, yeah, let me just start out by saying Christina Grossman was really motivated with the Riot team. And Anna Russell, who's racing again, I know you worked with Anna earlier today. Isn't it incredible that she had her her third child just 4 months ago? And she's already back racing like she didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, she's
Um,
incredible. Yeah, we
she's
had a
all
great time on the
really,
production last night. I think it's a
yeah,
nice welcome break for her.
to get away from mom duty, maybe
Yeah,
for a,
exactly.
a, a brief hour, right? So you two are just incredible, incredible women. That's for sure. And you bring so much to the community. So that being said, Anna is very much an aggressive racer, and they had a plan. They went into it, and uh, it was really fun to watch because you know the saying, they live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? If you want to race aggressively, it can
Mm.
backfire on you. And the higher the level of racing that you get to, Kate, you would have seen this in your career for sure, is riders have an amazing ability as they get smarter and savvier to let you play out all your cards before they show you that they were holding an ace all along, right? And how many times did you see that with savvy veterans,
A
right? And
lot.
so a
Well,
lot.
it's interesting on a course like this, Dave, because with all of these intermediate sprints, and we're looking at the fastest through segment as well as the first across the line. Something that really popped up in the racing that Anna actually pointed out was they don't get a power up in the first, like leading into that first sprint. So where we usually see the fastest through segment happen the first time through it, on this occasion we were actually seeing that happen on the second lap, which was quite interesting. But we also really noticed a lot of people kind of misusing their power ups and dropping them at what we thought were really quite odd times. And so I'm really interested to see how they handle that tonight. Also, Dave, last week the Ghost was amazing, wasn't it? It's like they were listening to us and throwing them out at really good times. But this course isn't nearly as good to use for the Ghost because there's just not quite the same opportunities, I don't think.
You nailed it. We've seen riders try. It has had nowhere near the effect out here. It's because, I think that the factor is not that the riders have, picked up any institutional knowledge on how to work against the Ghost. It's that there's so much variation in terrain out here. The sprints are not flat. They're either downhill or uphill, and no one's been able to sneak away. Really, it's been interesting. Courses are, it's definitely a different kind of course than what we saw the first. It's been phenomenal the way that the first 3 rounds of this season have been set up. It's going to really change team time trial, Kate, and then we'll move into, if you look at it, the Climber's Gambit to wrap this up will be a decidedly different kind of athlete. So this is the last chance for the sprinters to really have a big crack at it out here.
And on these intermediate sprints as well, because they come over a little bit of a lump beforehand, the timing's really important for that. They're coming over this little lump now, and then it goes descends straight back into it. You've got to get going pretty early. Too late, and you run out of opportunity to take your run for it.
Well, watch Andy Smith here. This is going to be, you have to thread the needle. You start sprinting before you can see the line, and this is it. You can, right there now, she's already fully, it's interesting. This one, it scores 10 deep now, and I don't know that they're going to get her before the line. This one started late. This was rather casual. Okay, if it's such a word as possible to use for a sprint. Not casual right there, but that one wasn't quite as explosive as what we've seen. I think these ladies realize it's going to be a long 39K of racing out here.
It is, and a little bit of ill timing there as well from Keskinen because she came very, very quick, but way too late. She was still out of her seat accelerating after the line had actually passed. And it does come really quickly upon you, I think, because with the descent and by the time you hit that sprint line, it's under a 10-second sprint, really. Maybe next lap they will be able to time that a little bit better, but we are looking at around about the hour mark for these ladies on course today, which is, not an insignificant length when you consider other races are often around the 40-minute mark. So they do need to be a little bit conservative.
We had 3 new courses this season in Premier. This is not one of them. It's been a pretty well used course, but it's not by far, but it's the longest day of racing that we have.
It is, and I think it's a good opportunity at this point when they've had a couple of races already to be able to test those legs out. And it certainly suits the sprinters who can go a little bit longer as well.
Fascinating information here. So Christina Grossman, who I was talking about in the America's East race earlier, as now the women are going to see, they get a preview of the finish here. They have 4 laps out here. So this gives me just a moment to talk about this 9.7K circuit, the perimeter. Now, Central Park is 843 acres of land. It's huge. It's got this futuristic element that you can see they added in. But this is an exact replica of a route that they race on, Kate. They've been racing there for decades. It's super early in the morning on Saturdays. I don't know if you've ever raced at 4 a.m. in the morning, but
No.
maybe.
Oh, that is a
Yeah,
hard no, Dave. I have not.
yeah. The kind of person who would say yes to someone who's an ultra marathon racer. Maybe they race through the night and we're up at 4 a.m., but very, very odd start time. Well, it's the only time we're going to see the start. Speaking of starts, this is the start of the men's race happening. So imagine it's 4 a.m. out there. So Christina Grossman lives right near Central Park in Queens, which is another borough right next to Manhattan. And she has on Strava, very active. I just saw some data sent from her in real life lap time, and her personal record on the course that we're racing on right now. It is a 11-second difference between the
Ooh,
times that she has ridden on Zwift, and yeah, isn't that fascinating? How closely this replicates
it
that?
is.
I
Yeah,
love it.
that's really cool. I mean, I've driven up Alpe d'Huez and I've ridden up Alpe d'Huez a bajillion times, but I'm yet to ride up Alpe d'Huez. I've only done it in the car, but that for me is like I feel like I'll be comfortable when I've tried them out for good. Ventoux perhaps is another one. I'm encouraged to see Peter Mogg out there and pushing the pace already. He's one of my favourites from last week. He really animated it, didn't he? Dave, this is a
He's
pretty
a
big
great
bunch for the
rider.
men, which will make it a little bit easier for them than for the women who have that smaller bunch. And if we just take a look at the overall points table, it's OMG They Killed Kenny who are in the kind of plum seat there with Dirty Rascals Riot and On the Rivet Hayes and On the Rivet Rush in second, third, and fourth. So far, so good for OMG They Killed Kenny. But what can they do tonight? Good for the sprinters again,
Well,
and well, they've failed thus far.
are you bummed, Kate, to not see Philippe Nystrom's name? Because I have good
Well,
news for you.
is he getting ready for Worlds? Is that why he's not here?
Exactly. No one slips anything by you, my friend. Philippe, I just saw, has flown successfully to Arkansas. They just announced, this is crazy great news, with Egan Bernal's news today. I've been heartbroken.
Uh,
I really, really, I just love that guy, Kate, and it just makes me so sad. I know that he's one of the nicest pros that's ever come down the road. But
it is really
good
sad
news.
news. Sorry, Dave, did you
It's
just
okay.
see what happened with our riders
Yeah,
going rogue?
yeah.
I've never seen that. That's a
Someone,
little bit funny.
some,
Anywho.
someone saw a quarter over on the side of the road, and they swooped over to try to grab it. Yeah, they saw a quarter. Um, so, anyways,
Oopsie.
Egan Bernal, everyone at Zwift loves you, and we're all pulling for you. Philippe just was able to. He's in Arkansas for. I should let everybody know our inside info, or not inside, but what we're talking about. Philippe is from Costa Rica. He's been racing on Oh My God, They Killed Kenny with us for a while. He was on another Costa Rican team a few seasons ago. Remember that, Kate? And we would always joke around about wanting to go to Costa Rica. Well, that wasn't a joke, actually. That
I would
remains
love to
real.
go to
But
Costa Rica.
yeah, we're still planning on that once this COVID thing kind of makes it possible. But anyways, they're going to have the Pan American Games are going to have a cyclocross event in Costa Rica for their next one. First time that's ever happened. So our friend Philippe is changing the globalizations of cyclocross right now. He races with this group, but he's going to be in Arkansas racing for Costa Rica on Sunday. So make sure you cheer for him. His teammates, some of
Oh,
them
I
are
will
flying
be
a Costa
following.
Rican flag, like Peter Moss, Travis Frazier. More of the, oh my God, this team is awesome. They've got an incredible vibe over there. And they're motivated here. This is Rampage that we're looking at. But you can see, I should now get to the point. Sorry, Nathan. The points. And they are perfect. Having a good start to the season, Kate.
Well, I'm very happy to see Dan Pedrosa out there. He had a really good week last week as well. Brian Diddy. I had a bit of fun with the names last week, actually. I'm just casting my eye over them again and having a little bit of a giggle. I do love that we did find out, we did solve the Juricic issue. They are father and son, although I did get
Yes,
some
yes.
guidance on how to pronounce that. So I'll have to look that up to make sure I can correct myself and get that right.
I thought we were going to talk about the Gontova situation for a second there.
Oh,
The
where is Nadia Gontova? We haven't seen that situation unfolding for a while.
She's in Premier League now. Yeah,
Oh,
she's been racing. She doesn't race a ton. She's super. It's like 1 minute she's in Hawaii swimming with dolphins. The next minute she's snowboarding down the side of a mountain. And next thing you see her, at school. So she's a lifestyle. It's Brett Boniface here, so it's good to see him back. And here we go, first sprint, Kate, for the riders, about 7.5K ish. So big play early. This is aggressive racing. I said we've seen just about everything. Left, right, and center been thrown at us. This is a new one, an early solo attack. I'd give him a chance.
well, look, an attack on this course, a solo attack, will be very, very difficult just based on the average speeds that they will be travelling through the race. But not to say that they can't use that, certainly for some of those intermediate sprints, and a good use of that Ghost power up, probably the best way to use it today. We did actually see in APAC, Dave, that a couple of riders used the Ghost to attack over the top of intermediate sprints when everybody was hesitating for a moment, which is a really good place to use it. But
The best you could
again,
do. Yeah.
yeah, but the sprints were travelling so fast that it was also nigh on impossible to even make that happen, to be able to get that break at all, because the speed just didn't drop enough to facilitate it.
Kate, did you realize that there's a splinter team now from Oh My God, They Killed Kenny? There's the Oh My FG, They Fed Cartman team. So it's franchising now. Second squad. That's a good sign for some real camaraderie happening there in the Oh My God, They Killed Kenny family.
Oh my God, They Killed Kenny. It's got to be one of my favourite teams, just also in terms of how they renew riders and bring new riders into the team, and always pretty big hitters, might I say. And I am curious, actually, how these teams do selection, whether they are really diving into Zwift power numbers, or whether they're, going more off kind of racing savvy, or a little bit of both. It would be quite curious to chat to a team director about that.
I want to chat with Bill Castro. I saw Bill saying that they made the Ghost stick twice in Atlantic this morning. So good for them. It's possible. It's just it's not as useful as it was last week. I really agree with Kate on that.
Well, last
it's
week
not useless.
I guess just it's not useless, but I suppose on that dead flat course in London, there were other ways to use it in terms of just launching really powerful attacks on the flat. But that's kind of negated on this course because of the up and down. It's actually over 500 metres of vertical climbing. Now, given normally when you're thinking about New York and the vertical climbing, you're actually thinking about the course that they'll be heading to for the World Championships that goes up those steep climbs. But even just doing the perimeter loop, there really isn't a flat meter to it. And toward the back end of the race, I think we'll really see that start to play out, because a lot of yo-yoing happens off the back of the bunch. It's actually, we did see that last week, didn't we, Dave, where the interesting part of the race wasn't even necessarily the front, it was what was happening at the back, with riders getting jettisoned on and off in that regard. The other thing I want to point out is last night. Oh, sorry, Dave.
Oh, I was just going to agree with you and say same thing today. This group will see riders getting spit out the back. These sprints get harder and harder out here. That's a really good point you make. But yeah, sorry to jump on you, Kate.
No, well, the other thing we saw was there was only one significant attack, and that was right toward the end, and it was almost an early sprint as Brian Naughty takes a little bit of an initiative to go early for this sprint. They're coming up to it. Jurassic is not too far behind Brian Beauty. Hold on his heels. Dan Pedrosa following up. I don't think he'll make it. He's been overtaken. A good start, but Brian Diddy He's going to take the points there. Now, Dave, I have looked up the pronunciation. It is Jurassic, I'm told. So Dan Pedrosa told me that it's not Juricic. It's actually Jurassic.
You know what?
So we'll go with that.
Makes sense.
Thinking like the dinosaurs.
Not the dinosaurs, but when you hear that and then you read it, I absolutely get it, and it'll be easy to remember. Yeah. Jurassic.
Now it will be. Now he had a good sprint, Ivan there. So, Isaac.
Ryan
sorry.
Diddy. Right. Hey, B. Diddy has become a rider of note. Definitely on my radar at this point. One of the strongest sprinters, without question, in this group. Okay. Really, really fun to have these sprints. The laps are 9.7K. So they're going to be sprinting again here in another, 12 minutes or so. And the points scoring 10 down to 1 for 10 riders. Now, you also have that fastest through segment. So we'll see riders targeting that here as well. We'll get a look at the points out here tonight. It has been awesome, and the women are much further into the races. They're already coming up on completing lap 2. Another sprint for the ladies here, Kate.
Well, if we take a look at these segment points so far, Keskinen, who did leave it a bit late, remember I specifically pointed that out, it looked like she was still accelerating toward the back end. She has actually got the fastest through segment at this point. She wasn't first across the line, she was second. Laura Thompson, the familiar face. Megan Alexander, great to see her back as well. A lot of familiar faces here. Now, Smith, who was first across the line, didn't get any fastest through segment points. Which really highlights how important the timing is in that final sprint, because you can, I can't remember the exact terminology you used, Dave, but it's like they were moseying on into that sprint, weren't they? They weren't really, hitting it too hard. So that's, I think, interesting. But again, now that they have picked up a power up, if they use that well into the next sprint, that is where we may see an even better fastest through segment time. And if Keskinen can do the same thing again, but perhaps go 3 or 4 seconds earlier, I'd bank on her being able to better her time from the first lap as well.
Good tip. Kat Salthouse right here, another rider to watch on. This is where, look at these little splits. They are racing very aggressively at this point in the race, and they go into the sector. The sprint begins right here, right now, and right on cue. This is going to be Laura Thompson. We've talked about what a danger woman she is. She'll pick up the 10 points. Keskinen, you tip her as a top rider, and you are absolutely right, Kate Bates. Gallagher coming through. There's Andy Smith. Dutch Diesel not having their way with the field out here, making for a very interesting race.
This is what I'm talking about, Kate. Keskinen has some real speed in the legs, doesn't she? Laura Thompson, that was really well timed from her. She is very consistent and was last week as well. I've been impressed with her this season, how she's come along. Isn't it interesting that certainly week 1 we were looking at DDC and thinking they will be nigh impossible to beat this season. But actually some of the other teams are kind of throwing everything they can at them, including the kitchen sink at this point, and having a bit of an impact. Few riders off the back, Dave, it's already starting to really take its toll at around the halfway mark.
I am shocked to see Kat Salthouse as one of those riders that we're talking about. She's a big talent. So we have seen riders chase back in as well. I don't know what's going to happen with this group. It really depends on if the peloton sits up, Kate, or if they continue to press on. If they press on, it makes it very, very tough to rejoin. But we've seen, I think Nathan would vouch for this statement, we've seen a surprising number of riders chase back today as well. Nathan's nodding his head in Wisconsin.
It's always hard to know with a rider like Salthouse if she might just be a little bit off today or whether she's having any connectivity issues or anything like that. But certainly it would be unusual for her to be off the back on most kinds of courses. She's such a strong and consistent rider, but she is actually dropping a little bit further back again. So perhaps she's not having the best of days. Dave, casting our eye over to these segment points, Keskinen, once again with the fastest through segment. So she's really solidified that.
Yeah, well, and this is when you have a multi-talented, I mean, the true triple threat is Keskinen here. So the Canadian with 43 total points. Laura Thompson, we've talked about already in the broadcast. So the giants of the road are not disappointing. It's going to be Murray, then Smith, 22 for Murray, 17 for Smith. But really, what's important to look at here is how Dutch Diesel has 22, 17, 16, and 14 points. So it's interesting because basically Murray and Smith, they neutralize Keskinen. They're a couple points shy, but then you add in Alexander and Gallagher, and all of a sudden you can see that Dutch Diesel is the top team on points right now, Kate. And that's how we score this. It's not individual glory; it's a team competition.
Well, it is interesting. I will say that often the riders who are ending up on the top points are not always the visible ones. So the fact that Keskinen and Thompson have been so visible puts a bit of a target on their back on top of it, because you are dead right that 3 through 6, all being DDC, some of these other teams are throwing some other tactics at them, and maybe on the individual rider level it makes an impact, but not in the overall. It is good timing to drop feathers for those who have it up these little sections as they go under the banner. But all of these little kicks, they just wear at the legs.
Kate, I have a question. Your experience is, I mean, a world champion, multi-time. You know, the amount of experience you have is incredible. This is my question for you. It's a go no go kind of question. Would you rather, as a sprinter, have it 4 different opportunities to look at the run-in and see the finish line? They're not sprinting because that finish line is different than the point sprint. So the final sprint was at the line they just went by. Would you rather 4 chances to look at it, but also giving your competition 4 chances to look at it, or race it blind? None of you have seen it. Which would have been better for you?
Good question.
That's a good question, right?
Really on the good questions today, Dave. And my answer to that would be, I would prefer to see it 4 times. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have a really savvy head on your shoulders when it comes to sprinting, you won't have 4 tactics for a sprint. You'll have more than that. And the opportunity through those intermediate sprints is to watch what the other riders do and how they do it, and how they use their power and the timing of it, and sit back a bit and watch. Not necessarily partake, but just sit back and watch. And I actually, I'm going to admit something here, Dave. I had a little bit of ego when I was riding, as they all do, right? I would actually, in maybe sprint 2 or 3, just, you know, with a little bit of arrogance, maybe for 5 seconds, do a massive effort, sail past a few people, and then just sit up and just get my legs there, and also get the feel and get other people thinking, oh, she's got good legs, because then it changes the way they react to you in the final sprint as well, and puts a bit more.
Yeah, put a little fear in them, right? Okay.
Yeah, it is a bit of a game.
Oh, head games are a big part of it, and I love that element of it. We were talking about match sprinting, I think, before the broadcast, and certainly your mental attitude has a big part in plays a big part in how the ultimate outcome will be delivered. So this is Towle that we're looking at now, the Rampage rider, in and out, deep into the pain cave, scraping the walls of the pain cave right now. As it's dark, it's damp, there's no light at all. And this rider is going to take a big run at it. So the Canadian now has gone 6 seconds out. I'm trying to do the math. Okay, this is going to be tough. It's doable, but this is obviously a run for 10 points here. A run for the border, as we would say in America.
This is a great run. I mean, Benoit Foucher, the one thing I will say about him is he's not a pure sprinter, but he does have a fair bit of acceleration, a long-range acceleration. So it's not super snappy, and I'm just snap my fingers. I'm not sure if you even heard that on the mic. It's like I'm on TV.
I heard it.
Sorry. He's not super snappy, but once he gets up to speed, he can actually hold that fairly consistently. He attacked under the cover of the Ghost. I'm not sure if you noticed that. So it's quite a good way to use it on this kind of course. The other thing I really notice in his Zwift power, Dave, is that he's ridden very efficiently so far. So there's a couple of riders, if we're looking at their average watts per kg thus far, who my advice to them, and Dan Pedrosa, if you're listening, this is for you, near the front, not on the front. A little bit of conservative riding, I think, from some of them would help. But Brian Foucher looks so far, Benoit, pardon me, to have been just sitting quite comfortably and not doing too much damage. He's out to 14 seconds. This is not insignificant, Dave.
Yeah, the largest break I've seen in yesterday and today encapsulated is right here. It was also Leandro Messanillo out of Argentina that took it out to 14 seconds. But Benoit right now is this is exceptional. This is definitely good now to pick up the 10 points, and it's going to make a statement here for sure. Big moment in the race. So, okay. I think we're going to hear this name quite a bit more in the future. And Kate, you made a good point. He kept his TSS as low as possible, sitting back in that group, didn't let his nose feel the wind until he attacked. So this was planned, well executed, and he committed to it. This was not, he didn't half-ass this attack. And he even used the ghost. He went all in. I'm impressed, Benoit.
Yeah, I'm impressed. This is from any of the racing I've seen on this course this week. And of course, I bookended, started with APAC, was the first one, first cab off the rank in the community leagues. I didn't see any gaps over about 6 seconds at all. So this is very good for Benoit Foucher. If he would like to now just relax, roll to the line, not have to go into the orange at all. And they will reel him back in, but the difference there is Oliphant, Hill, Northway, Van der Veen, they are having to go into the orange and go flat chat to try and lessen that gap. Benoit Foucher is in a pretty good position to just roll it in.
And Kate, sorry, it's one of these things where it's not worth trying to chase him back. At some point, 9 points isn't that different than 10, right? So why burn a ton of matches trying to bring him back to just get one more point? Might as well sprint for 9, knowing that he's going to back off, which he has done. That's going to be Benoit coming back into the group. But yeah, I mean, you got to don't waste your resources at the halfway point of this race. We've got a lot of points at the finish that are going to be critical. Every race has been decided ultimately by the top 5 at the finish line, not what happened at the second sprint. Sure, you need to be up there. You need to be contesting these sprints, but don't kill your team for one more point.
No, and often when they do have so many intermediate sprints, we are seeing quite a different raft of names that are performing along the way than those that are ultimately sprinting for those finish points. We've also seen that beautiful pie graph on Zwift Insider that lets them understand the points in terms of significance to get those overall points. They've all been around long enough now, Dave, to have beautiful whiteboards full of different point strategies. Some of the bigger teams actually where the dominance comes into them, and look at that, a bit of cheer. That's awesome, Bill Quattro. Thank you for the support as well. That was a great attack from him. Very efficient way to win a sprint. Is that, Dave, then they can send some of their riders up, just get the intermediate points and make it very much about that's their race and how they're contributing to the overall point standings, while some others will be sitting back and just waiting for the sprint again. Now, I have to say, I'm a little bit curious about Dan Pedrosa tonight. I feel like he might have really good legs, Dave. So he's been at the front a little bit more than we've seen in some other weeks. You often see that when they have pretty good legs and they're up the front a little bit. And you can tell that by looking at their average watts per kg overall. But just based on his sprint, I think he would be a hot favourite on this kind of sprint if he can time it right. So I hope that the OMG crew give him the comfort to sit back a bit and save his legs coming into the final laps. Over to the women, Dave, and it's a bit of a different picture here, a much smaller field at this point in the race.
It's interesting, Kate, when you look at, and again, joining the women now, 24.6K into a 39-kilometer race. So you don't want everybody on the team. It's like, I don't know if it's the same way in Australia, but youth soccer is pretty big in America, Kate. And it's really funny. It's not until about 10 years old that the kids sort of stop all chasing the ball around in mass as
Oh,
it takes a
yeah.
while for them to realize, right, that there's actual different positions and you don't all go for the same thing at the same time. That doesn't work. And it's the same thing on cycling teams. As it becomes more sophisticated, riders understand roles and how you can make a difference. We saw Nathan might have to help me remember now, but we saw the it was Aeonian today in the Europe, Middle
Oh,
East, and women's race where they did the best lead out that I've seen a long. You would have been impressed, Kate. So
ooh, I like
and you don't get a lead out by everybody. Isn't that sweet? And yeah, you know what I'm saying though. If everyone on the team is trying to do the same thing at the same time, it turns into a dog's breakfast.
it's well. Last night in the APAC, Richard Law won it. Now he sprinted when we were looking at it, and I were like, he literally came out of nowhere. We do not know how he managed that. He then let us know afterwards that you couldn't really see it on the broadcast, but they actually essentially slingshotted him out of the pack for some really good teamwork. So we are starting to see the slightly more sophisticated team tactics play out. But it is always something, and this is possibly a little bit more in the women than the men, but Zwift Community League is like the perfect breeding ground for this, where you have some members of teams who accelerate so quickly because you might have heard me say it before, Dave, they're lungs on bikes. Like they're just so capable physically of putting out the
Can
power,
I steal
but it
that?
does take them a little bit
Can
of
I
time
use?
to learn the racecraft. Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. I want to check with you. You're going to hear that in the Premier League broadcast, but don't think that I didn't know that you didn't come up with it. That's brilliant.
It's very
Lungs
good
on
for
bike.
multi-sport athletes, Dave. Lungs on bikes. Yes.
Yeah,
And you know
right.
exactly what I mean when they've got a massive engine, but they're new to the sport and they're still figuring out
Mm.
the strategic side of it.
And I got to be honest with you, Kate. I think that those type of riders are going to really appreciate the next 3 weeks, or actually, that moving out of the sprint
Mm.
format that we've been using these first 3 weeks, I should say, because the community has a healthy, robust schedule. Let's turn our attention to another attack. It looks like Dutch Diesel has hit out with authority. This is going to be Andy Smith. So it's Smith and Gallagher attacking for Dutch Diesel. Laura Thompson trying to cover, and we got ourselves a moment here late in the race. Another sprint coming up. They're into that sprint sector, and Dutch Diesel definitely goes 1-2 here. Maybe even
Well,
1-2-3.
Gallagher, that was a good one to ride over the top. But how good was that timing from Smith? Really setting it up for the team. Dave, in my dreams, a rider would go whack over the top right now, catch them napping, and see what
Yeah,
happens.
you are a dreamer.
Alas,
You've been you've
I
been hanging around
am.
Nathan for a long time now because that's exactly the way Nathan would think about it. And I love that is that long range attack, right? It's so beautiful when it works, but we haven't seen it
It
happen. It
is.
hasn't happened all
Yeah.
week.
You've got to be a bit crazy to do it. Now, you're right. Next week
Got to be
is a team's time
Kevin
trial,
Bouchard
so that'll
Hall.
be the first time they do that this season. Dave, and then they've got a couple of more difficult ones. In fact, the Watopia that's called the Climber's Gambit, I have a feeling that some of our riders that we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks might be shaking in their boots for that one, but even Temple and Towers in the Makuri Islands. So there's a couple of big weeks coming up before we do head back to Richmond, which is a bit for the punchers, a bit of a mix there for everybody to be happy.
Richmond is a racer's course, that's for sure. I happen to really really like it. It seems like that's one of the courses that has that high level of difference between people either love it or hate it. kind of thing, where London is sort of like everyone is pretty neutral. They just all like it. It's interesting, but this is Central Park. This is special. There's no doubt that this is way more challenging than I ever would have imagined Central Park could be. So much more up, down. You're either going up, down, or turning when you're out here on this 9.7 kilometer circuit. The ladies are into it now, just about to go into the last lap heroics. We'll go back to the men here and pick up their action as they're into the second half of the race as well. Another sprint coming up for the guys. So just on top of Harlem Hill right here.
All right. So the men are looking at about a 49-minute finish. So they are within that final 20 minutes. I point that out, Dave, because both Anna and I agreed that there's a mental barrier in that last 20 minutes where you think, last 20 minutes, I can do this. I can suffer and hang on a bit more. Whereas longer than that can still seem a little bit intimidating. So I would say all they really need to focus on now is getting safely through the next sprint and then hanging on and positioning themselves well. Once again, OMG are really quite active and prominent toward the front. I need to have another good look through their team roster this week, Dave, because they always bring a very, very strong team. And I'm curious about what their tactics might be for the back end, because it's playing differently than what I would have thought so far.
Your man Pedroza is having a great day. It's interesting. The odds makers in Vegas would be looking at this as a Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier battle with Diddy and Pedroza here tied on points. This is epic stuff. It's certainly, oh my God, they killed Kenny. You can see then that they've got a nice thing going here with the points, but this is nowhere near a runaway. A good mix of teams up here. And what we saw today, great example of the women's race that happened out of America's East, is the Riot team had a nice advantage heading into the final sprint, but then they barely eked it out after, they did not crush the final sprint. And right now, oh my God, they killed Kenny. Yeah, bit of an advantage, but in no way can you say that they're completely in the driver's seat here. This race is wide open.
It is. We've actually had not an insignificant number of riders dropped so far. And Dave, I'm sad to say that Benoit Fauché, after his beautiful attack for the points, he's sitting 7th there. Fauché, after what we saw in the last lap, he's now been dropped off the back a bit, so he's about a minute and a half back. So I think that's his day done. But big kudos to him. That is about 10 seconds off the back. Between 4 and 10 that needs to come back together because it just shows that it is really starting to get difficult at the back, and they need to be very careful about their bunch positioning as they start rolling over these little rollers.
How many times, Kate, in your time on the velodrome, did you realize, there we go, did you have the saying, you have to pay the piper? Well, it's either now or later, but you're going to pay for an effort like that. And the piper, it does not accept credit cards.
Yeah.
No. And so,
they should accept PayPass by now, I would think, Dave, or PayPal or Venmo or whatever these funny things you guys do in America. I think Venmo's an American thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Dave Coin.
I just saw Sosnowski pop up, Dave. He's one of my favies from last week too. He's got some cookies in the jar for the end of the race.
Okay. Sorry about the picture here. It's been really a busy day on Zwift, that's for sure. Not sure if you're getting the same images I am. There you go. Sounds like it's fine for everyone. All right. Going back to you, Kate. There we go. Picking up the peloton with just a couple of riders dangling off the front here. They're about to head into their final lap. So 3 sprints left. This next one scoring again, 10 deep, and they're deep into it now. Let's get in, boys.
All right, this is where it does get interesting, and you can see top of right how close they are to that sprint. Once they hit that line, you're only looking at about 8 seconds Max. Did he add it again? Foucher, now is he again family? Is he brother? I'm loving these connections. Another Canadian, perhaps brother to Benoit. Let somebody tell us. They can let us about that one. But he had a very good sprint, is why I point his name out there, Dave.
So far, you've done a good job with the crowdsourcing of this, like Jurassic. See how I've got that right now?
Yes.
And
Yep, I believe
well, it's
so.
active on the
and I'm
front.
sticking to Bonifaci, even if that's not how you say it. I'm sure
I
that.
wonder,
Yeah.
So it looks like I apologize if anybody had any picture breakup up there, but I think we've got that sorted out here now. Here's our man Pedroza. He is fit, no question. Getting stronger and stronger each week, and they're pushing the pace out here. Oh my God, they killed Kenny. Has got a real momentum as a team, and let's see what we've got now. Big group. Haven't seen too many groups this large at this point in the race. A lot of depth
There's
coming
about
out of America.
46 of them. This is a very solid group, and I do think that we do have some really powerful sprinters at the end. But we keep pointing it out, Dave, the timing on the final sprint. What is interesting again is because, as you rightly pointed out, the final sprint is not that intermediate sprint. It's a couple of kilometres further. So they need to be very measured in how they manage that intermediate sprint, because that is the perfect time for a breakaway in that intermediate, because they're not going to want to race flat chat from that intermediate sprint to the finish. So there's an opportunity there. Some of the teams might just want to go for a bit of a longer lead out. You mentioned that you saw a beautiful lead out, Dave. Can you tell me what it was about it that was so beautiful? Because I'm very curious about how they did it, all while we're watching Boniface again moving away. This has got to be 2 weeks in a row where he gets like best and fairest, most aggressive star. Can you get all those categories at once? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I almost think he's got my vote for that. So, Kate, yeah, just go back to your question. So what they did was at about 500 meters, Aonian had 4 riders that were sitting right in the sweet spot of the peloton. They weren't on the front. They were near the front. And they let another team initiate so the first 2 booster rockets were fired without them using 1 extra calorie. So another team started the sprint, another team covered, and then they initiated their 4-rider process of bringing to the line their fastest sprinter, who was 3rd in line. They even had her protected on the back wheel. I don't know if that was all, a little bit of that.
That's
anytime, Kate. Yeah, and again, always going to be a little luck to something like this too, in real life or out here. But yeah, I mean, to sweep the wheel of your sprinter, let them go, dropping her off at 100. It was such a steep sprint to the line. It ramps up there, and it's 9%.
It really does.
I think. Right,
Yeah.
and so you don't drop her off at 300 meters. You drop her off at 120 meters when it's that steep.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And
if you can get that dominance in that lead in, it does make all of the difference, doesn't it? The women's field is so much smaller than the men's that the tactics are quite different, because the women, it's a lot easier to be positioned well, is the first thing I would point out about that. But also, there's very few places to hide, so they've got to contest with that as well. Now, the women have got about 10 minutes left of racing to go. I don't expect, to be honest, too much action between here and the finish. I would think that as they're coming into kind of the final 5 minutes, they'd all be getting a good position, finding the right gear, having a final drink, and steeling themselves for either a late attack or a sprint lead-in. What we're seeing happen in the men's, Dave, is very, very different. And Boniface, he's really getting quite a big gap out there now. 8 seconds. You can see the field in the back. But, yeah, they got right up behind him, and then it opened up again. So it's heading toward the 10-second mark. And, again, they're only about 10 minutes from the finish. So it's probably not something that can be completely ignored. Some of the big teams will have to be certainly talking to amongst themselves about how they're going to handle this and the timing of it.
A couple of years ago, Brett was one of the most successful esports racers out there. Kate, the Canadian was a dominant force, to tell you the truth. I mean, it seemed like he was always in the conversation. This is pre-ZRL. He had a bit of a layoff, but it is not a surprise. This is a very dangerous, talented rider, knows how to win. And Kate, I think it's a great moment to talk about that. You've seen it, I would think, throughout your career. There's certain people are just natural born. I used the term, we kind of joked about this, stone cold killer, right? But in a different sense. But
Yeah.
someone who just knows they win. They win at most things that they do. They don't really accept losing. Be it ego, be it skill, talent, even confidence or lack of whatever it might be. There's some people that just race and are it doesn't have the same importance to them, right? You've seen that, haven't you?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes that can be a really good attribute in a rider because they don't carry the same anxiety and they see everything as an opportunity. And you certainly, when you're racing frequently, you have to be prepared to lose in order to win. There's a lot of tactics that I'd love to try out in Zwift, but you can't try them out unless you're actually racing because you can't go out there on your own and try it. The dynamics are completely different. Even in terms of which power-ups you might get, because power-ups aren't guaranteed which one you'll get, you literally have to go in with all of these different tactics and possibilities depending on what you may or may not get. And I think sometimes those more chilled, relaxed riders often pull off the most magnificent victories, Dave, because they just do something a little bit outside the box because they're not particularly fussed if it doesn't work.
Kate, what I'm laughing to myself thinking about you and Anna Russell and Nathan all in real life, like the Coyote and the Roadrunner cartoons, with an anvil at the top of a hill, sprinting and seeing if you could use the anvil to win sprints. It would have been really cool to see. You know who would have done it? Well, Teppo Lorio would have tried that anvil sprinting, right? Because you have an opportunity with the downhill here. If you time it well,
I do. I
yeah.
really want to try anvil sprinting. I'm dead
We
set
need to
to
get
try
you
it. I
guys
think
on
it's
top. Yeah. Okay, come out to Wisconsin. We'll put you on top of a hill with an anvil. You and Nathan and Anna. And yeah, I mean,
well, what I
but
can tell
that's
you,
what you're
Dave, is
talking about.
there was a coach in Australia that used to put rocks in the back of riders' jerseys when he felt they had to lose weight. He would put extra rocks in and say, "This is what you're carrying around that you don't need to," which was
Yeah, I used to.
quite fun on downhill, not so good on the uphill. He's not a coach anymore. You might be surprised to know.
No, that technique might not go over so well in the modern world. I used to know riders that
No.
would train with weight vests. Weight vests is something you don't really see anymore either. So Brett Boniface was brought back into the men's group, so that catch was made. We're going to turn our attention back to the women as we've got Laura Thompson here and Dutch Diesel.
We're coming into the
Okay, it's going to
final
be a.
finish here, aren't we?
We sure are.
We're not
This is
far
now.
out.
Yeah, so this is where, okay, that's going to be Thompson in the green jersey here using the Aero power up. Makes her a little slippier, 25%. Then she picks up. That wasn't the finish line then. That was your bonus sprint. She'll get the 10 points. We'll score that 10 deep. And here we go, Kate. Run to the finish line now for our women in America's West. Spirited racing. Good job, ladies.
Well, this is where it does get difficult because they've got to get now to that finish line. You think that it would be easy to sit up around that. They do need to regroup a little bit here. Now, interesting, I want to say, is that the riders like Summertime, Rachel Winchester, Sarah Northway, who are the ones who probably have the quickest sprint, they've actually been dropped off the back a bit, so it is quite a select group up the front here. Laura Thompson has got to be one of the fastest sprinters still in there, but she's had so many efforts already, Dave. So does she have another one in her is a good question. I think Janelle
Good
Yiller
question.
and Pat Murray, both DDC, are probably the two I would highlight. There's a lot of them left in this front bunch. They do win when it comes to numbers games. And Yiller in particular, if she can get a good wheel and not leave her run too late, but not go too early, just get the timing right, it might be a day for her.
We'll see if they were able to watch Aeonian and channel that. Dutch Diesel has the number, the technique, the ability. It's all within their capabilities, Kate. That's Dutch Diesel in the orange and blue as we are into the final, a little over 1K until this one is done and dusted. Can Laura Thompson come back and do it one more time? Kate asks a very good question there. As the ability to go deep like that over and over, only a very special athlete would be able to pull that up, but she's positioned well, and certainly her head is in the game. Talking about Laura Thompson there in the yellow jersey. These are the top women in America's West, bringing it down to the line now. We are at 1K to go.
Well, Yiller, Gallagher, Thompson and Murray, they're all sitting very nicely toward the front there. This is all about timing, and you can tell from the pace and even the power we're looking at from Pat Murray there, even the heart rate, this is a little bit of cat and mouse we're almost seeing. Offenbrink is taking it to the front team F3. They've got a couple of riders up there, so they can afford to perhaps work together a bit. Are they doing the Aeonian, do we think, Dave?
Well, no. Well, they're playing into the hand of DDC, to tell you the truth, right? They're doing their work for them, setting the pace so DDC can swarm them.
Yeah.
Here we go. This starts it. Let's light the fuse, Kate. All right. The fuse is burning. Who's going to be the bomb? Watch DDC. They're timing this well because you don't want to go too early. This is a long, drawn-out sprint. Kate Bates, here we go. DDC looks pretty good to me.
This is a big sprint. They've opened up pretty early. Oh, but that's almost a bit of a handbrake that's happened there for Gallagher. Pat Murray over the top. Can she make it to the line? She will. That was beautifully timed from Pat Murray.
Not
there.
Bad.
But gee, when the road turned up, Dave, gee, that bit a few riders, didn't it? It was almost like a handbrake got pulled on a couple of them.
Imagine I feel myself cramping, like going that hard on a hill like that after that hard of an hour almost of racing. And you got to remember, most of these riders are warming up for half an hour, I would think, just to be ready to go. Here the guys are. Boy, this is over very quickly here. Blink and you'll miss it today in the ZRL, as these guys are now bonus sprint and finales. All we've got. My man, Brian Diddy, absolutely ripping it out here. This guy's a rocket ship, Kate.
Well, Brian Diddy, geez, I'll tell you what, I like the saying he looks good on paper because, we never know what they will actually be able to bring on the day. But I don't know why he went for that sprint, Dave, when the finish is so close and he is so capable of winning that final sprint. I just feel a little bit nervous for that tactic.
I honestly
I mean, who am I to criticise him? Yeah.
So did you, when you were racing in the States, Kate, I was talking with yesterday about this in Premier League with Matt Stevens about the Gamblers Preem, which is, it's not super common, but it's not rare either. A big money, like a race like Athens Twilight will have let's say a $5,000 Preem with one lap to go. And so it creates a crazy dynamic where it's what racer doesn't, right? So if you got a super strong team, you would have one rider go for that and then another rider go for the win. But sort of the same thing here with this late bonus. It's super hard to sprint like that 2 times in 4 minutes.
It is, and I don't know. Again, I'm a bit nervous for him having done that because TFC don't necessarily have the numbers game when it comes to this final sprint. But again, Diddy has been picking up some pretty consistent points along the way, and I think if he can hold any wheel, he'll still be able to run in the top couple if we are looking simply at a points tally. what are OMG doing here? If they can get together, I do think it will be very difficult to outkick them, especially the form that we have seen from Pedrosa. But David Amato is one I want to point to, Dave, that we actually haven't talked about at all yet today, which is interesting because he is very, very capable of having an exceptionally fast sprint finish. So he looks to me like he's been just sitting in, sneaking some
Sounds like
good
he's smart.
wheels.
He knows how to hide.
Yeah, and a big move here, an early start, an early jump.
Mo Bigga, the notorious Mo Bigga, off of the front. And let's see, are they going to swarm him? It's a ways to go to the line. Gallop is underway. Here comes, oh my God, they killed Kenny full force. Kate, it looks like this one is going to be a drag race to the line.
Gee, they're just changing hands here. Van der Veen has just been overtaken toward the end. Pedrosa, I think, might have gotten that ahead of Tangerman, and Van der Veen just got pipped just before the line. He opened up really well, though, but those places changed so quickly toward the end. Let's take another look at this. A big hit out from Kempton and Matson off early, Dave.
Yeah, and you just see things reshuffle so quickly here at the front. It's a 9% grade that they're sprinting on. It's much steeper than it looks here. So they are, all things considered, that's a well-played aero power-up there. As the Riot Rider, Van der Veen, I think Van der Veen holds on, however. We'll take a look at the results here. You can always...
might have been a bit late. I think you're right about that one. It might have been Andrew Tangerman who got that, because Tangerman was the one that came over, that Pedrosa was attempting to come over the top of.
While we let all that data settle, Kate, did you ever have a photo finish in a race that you did that you thought you won, that they showed you a photo where you didn't? That ever happened to you?
No, I was not a photo finisher.
Killed them, huh? Yeah, they weren't even standing when you were done.
I didn't mean it like that.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean,
I was not a photo finisher. I killed them.
No.
Yeah.
I always did have like an almost nightmare playing out in my head that I would lose a race because I was a pretty average bike thrower. And so toward the end of my career, I did start practicing the bike throw, Dave, like out on the training course, just in case I ever got to the position where I was needing to do a bike throw. Alas, I didn't actually have to do that. Some pretty good sprints there. Pat Murray, that was fantastic. Yeah. Did Pedrosa get it or not? I'd like to see that. And again, I said it early, I think he's got really good legs because he was doing so much work. He was a little bit inefficient, but it's often what we see happen when they just feel so good that they kind of throw caution to the wind and get out there. Let's take a look at the women's results, Dave, and unpack this top 10 a little bit.
Yeah, we'll go right to your top 10. Now, the team points get tallied up, but it was Patricia Murray for Dutch Diesel taking the win, right over an hour of racing. Stephanie Hsu will be our silver medalist out here, riding for Team F3 FBW. They're really coming on strong. Dutch Diesel has Andy Smith as your bronze medal winner. Laura Thompson, active all day, was the Canadian for Cadence in fourth. Then Dutch Diesel has the next two spots with Julie Gallagher, the American, Sarah King from Canada. And it goes further than that, actually. Megan Alexander from Australia, Janelle Yila from Canada for Dutch Diesel. So very, very impressive job there in the finale. Alto Velo Tunitas has Chris Davis up there in fourth, and then Brittany Keskinen ends up, actually, looks like there are a bunch of ties out there. At any rate, that's how we break down our top 10.
Yeah, that looked, and a couple of those names, Keskinen in particular, incredible sprinting in the middle, as with Laura Thompson. But Patricia Murray, fantastic finish for DDC. Bring it up. Here is Summertime that I was talking about. I thought actually she was up in Bs, but she is sitting in Cs. Not a surprise to see her win. Very impressive in a sprint she is. Carrie Bartlett from the herd of Misfit Meerkats in second. Tammy Taylor in third from DDC Atomic Kittens. DDC Atomic Kittens, that's Whitney Stidham. We had a bit of a chat about her last week. She was riding so well. Cindy Maloney in fifth from Coalition Synthesis, and Gail Matherly coming in sixth from DDC Atomic Kittens as well. They are still coming in that race a little bit longer today than some of the other ones, Dave.
Yeah, longest race of the season today here in Central Park. The Park Perimeter Course, the third race of the season out here. So that was a look at the women. I think they're still working on the men, and look at that. There you go. And look, you got it. Interesting.
Did, yeah. So Dan Pedrosa took the win there for OMG. They killed Kenny, which we need to distinguish from this new OMFG. They fed Cartman. What does the F stand for, I wonder, Dave? Andrew Tangenin coming in second from On the Rivet Hayes. A pretty tight sprint, though. It was very hard to call at the finish. In fact, we kind of called it the other way around, but there you go. John Vanderveen in third, Dirty Rusk was right. Patrick Orick from OMFG, they fed Cartman. Somebody tell us what that F stands for, or my Australian bogan slang imagination will fill that gap. Graham Hill, and bogan means redneck, I think, Dave, in your vernacular. Graham Hill in fifth, On the Rivet Rush. In sixth, we've got David Amato. Now, I thought he might be a bit further up in that sprint, but did go up to 9%, so that might have gotten him a bit. In seventh, we've got Eric Tudor for the Dirty Rascals Riot with his teammate Ben Nordstrom in eighth. Stephen Wu for AF Troposphere in ninth. In 10th, we've got Lou McGranigan from OMG. They killed Kenny, so they've bookended that top 10. A great day out on course for that team.
I look at you as not only a colleague but a friend. I'll send you a message and let you know what that F actually means. We got it covered.
Heavens.
All right. So, yeah. So here's the B's for you here. It's a tough course, no doubt. This looks like it was an epic battle. Oh, Canada. They really canucked up out there as CrowdGen Mount Diablo is the team of the first rider over the line. That's Danny Mossman. He had over a second gap, so looks like he did it with authority there in the finish. Colin Saunders on the Rivet TWSS silver medal winner. Nathan Manick in third for Dirty Rascals Grit. It's Dennis Shaniger, TFC Pickle Juice. Pickle Juice is back. Kate in fourth. Good old Jed Schneider, formerly of Jittery Joe's, now of Dr. Wilbar. In fifth today, former American pro. Eric John of TFC Pickle Juice in sixth. Tofu Smuggler, KRTB Big Timbers in seventh. John Walrod. So Dr. Wilbar has a few kind of the old American professional peloton represented on that team,
cool.
Sort of like Velocio, it looks like. That's fun. And then Wei Cheng Han of Herd of Griffins ends up in ninth. Do you know what a griffin is, Kate?
I'm thinking
it's
like
Paul,
a bird. Is it a bird?
It's a mythical animal, half lion, half. Now I'm not even sure. I want to say half lion, half horse, maybe. But
it's like
a flying lion. It's a flying lion, Kate. And then Dirty Rascals believe it, So sort of like a unicorn, though. I'm not 100% sure they exist. And then Paul Juckham ends up rounding out our top 10 for the Bs.
All right, let's take the Cs. They aren't through yet, Dave, but as always, we can head to WTRL.racing for any of the results that we didn't get through tonight because it is a little bit of a longer course. Now, Dave, there's a team's time trial next week, and then the sprinters might get a little bit of a relaxed time when they head into the mountains. I'm not even sure if we'll see the same team lineups happening for some of those courses that are coming up.
Yeah, the World Championships also. So it's really interesting. We're into a new month, and there's going to be a major shift. Now, the team time trial is the perfect pivot point for us here, as I think it's fair to say we've just hit the halfway mark of the season here. with the beginning of the second half. It's been really fun so far, Kate. I cannot wait for more. And a big thanks to Nathan Guerra for all his support behind the scenes tonight.
Yes.
I love
Thank you to our
CRL.
production team. We'll see you all next week. And Dave, you need a little bit of hot tea or hot pickle juice.
I know.
That's right
Long
after
day.
all day. We will see
Started
you
at
all
6 a.m.
next week. All right. Bye.